Welcome to Occult of Personality, esoteric podcast extraordinaire. I'm your host, Greg Kaminsky. In episode number 207, our friend Derek Hunter returns to the show to discuss his recent book, The End of the World, a Love Chaos Grimoire for the Survival and Evolution of Human Beings. Occult of Personality podcast is made possible by you, the listeners, and by the subscribers to chamberofreflection.com, our membership site, who aids us in the cause of informed, authentic, and accessible interviews about Western esotericism. Because of your support, we're able to bring you recordings of this caliber and many more to come. I want to take a moment to announce the publication of my first book. It's entitled Pronaos, Reflections on the Preliminary Practices of Buddhist Tantra from a Western Perspective. If you're interested in esoteric spirituality and the pursuit of gnosis, seeking effective and practicable methods that produce transformation and even have the potential to bring the practitioner to self-realization, then this book is for you. Designed to provide readers with a perspective on the view and methods of the preliminary practices of Buddhist Tantra in a way that is accessible and applicable to modern Westerners, using examples and quotations from familiar philosophical and esoteric traditions. Because human beings are essentially similar, this path can be effective and has proven to be so for women and men across centuries, continents, and cultures. The highest spiritual realization is available to all of us, regardless of who we are, where or when we live, or any other circumstance, provided we receive the teachings and practice the methods. This book is a first step towards that. Available on Amazon.com. See the link in the show notes. Anathema Publishing Limited. Quality occult books and contemporary esoterica. Established in 2011, Anathema Publishing aims to provide superior literature in content and form by creating a trinosophic relationship in troth and gabo between publisher, author, and reader. Anathema Publishing produces refined books for the true bibliophile on topics ranging from Gnosticism, traditional craft, alchemy, Hermeticism, witchcraft, to Luciferian theosophy. www.anathemapublishing.com. Now, in episode number 207, an interview with Derek Hunter about his recent book, The End of the World, a Love Chaos Grimoire for the Survival and Evolution of Human Beings. You can find Derek online at www.love-chaos.com. And you may recall that Derek last joined us previously in 2018. I really like the intention behind Derek's work in this book, and I appreciate the desire to benefit humanity by esoteric means. I also feel that this is one of the more positive reactions to the events of the past year that I've seen. This interview was quite enjoyable, as Derek is a kind, thoughtful, good man who's overcome adversity and works to help others. And all of that comes through his words and deeds, as you'll hear in this interview. I recommend Derek and his work. His approach to spirituality is genuinely from the heart, and that is a great quality. Derek Hunter is a writer of fiction and nonfiction, the founder of Love Chaos, a non-dogmatic, agnostic philosophy and way of life. Hunter created Love Chaos in 2014 with the publication of the first book, Love Chaos. It was conceived as a means for Hunter to help himself in a dark time in his life and also to help others. The intro music is Awakening by Paul Avgerinos, and the outro music is Evolution by MRDC. Derek Hunter, welcome back to Occult of Personality podcast. It's great to speak with you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on, Greg. I really, really appreciate you asking me on and being here and having an opportunity to talk with you again. Very much appreciate and very happy to be here.
Yeah, likewise. I feel the same. And, I've been following your work for a while now. And I think it's been maybe, 2 or 3 years since we last spoke. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think 2017, thereabouts, I think is when we first met. And then I think we did our conversation like the end of 2017. And so it's been about 3 years. Yeah.
Wow. So a lot of things have changed since then, both probably in our personal lives and the world in general.
Yes.
And you've put out a new book, and that's part of the reason why we're meeting tonight to speak about it. It's called The End of the World, a Love Chaos Grimoire for the Survival and Evolution of Human Beings. And we're going to get to the book. I really like it, and I like the intention behind it. But
Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe the best way to begin is, we talked a bit about, you and your work in the previous interview, but that was really quite a brief introduction, and so maybe the best place to begin, I think, might be to refresh the listeners' memories about Love Chaos, your personal philosophy, I guess you could say, and just sort of remind people about what you do and your life and how it all fits together.
Sure. Yeah. That was a really great conversation that we had. I remember, it was like about a half an hour long. It was excellent, but it was a good kind of like, I guess sort of like a crash course into who I am and the kind of work that I do. And that was great. And it certainly is something that, for me, and we've talked about this before, both in that conversation and just in our personal lives, is just how important it is for me to have a philosophy of life, which is something that is embodied in my day-to-day existence. And that's inclusive of pretty much all aspects of my life. And so I've been practicing magic. I've been, a dabbler in the occult for about a decade now. And when I first got into it, I was a very different person than who I am now. And I was really into Aleister Crowley and Austin Osman Spare and Robert Anton Wilson and others, and did my own sort of thing and was, just exploring. But I was really doing a lot of heavy substance use, and really wanted to live life, in my mind, to the fullest. And that, to me, at that time, meant pushing myself with intoxicants. As an artist, as a writer, I'm a writer. My main thing as a writer is writing stories, writing fiction. So I certainly had an awareness about life. I was definitely not like completely unconscious at the time, but it was definitely a sort of I think a self-destructive bent to what I was doing, which was not good, not just for myself, but the fact that I had a son in my life. And so when I got to the point of a number of years of living that kind of lifestyle, I realized that I had to make a big change. And I needed help from people outside of myself, that I needed to do some serious emotional growth and increase my emotional intelligence. And at the time, this was in 2014, so this was about 6 years ago, I was thinking about joining a belief system which could help me. And because for most people, that's what happens, is for most people to get out of a life of heavy addiction or misbehaving or whatever it is that we do where we want to change our lives. Generally, like most people are born again in one fashion or another. And for me, it was really difficult to find something that I could firmly, sincerely, 100% believe in. There's a lot of belief systems out there, which, I mean, I can find value in pretty much almost every belief system out there, and some more than others for me. But none was really speaking to me, to my heart. And so I had this crazy notion, that maybe, well, why not just create something of my own? Why not just create my own way of life, my own way of seeing the world, my own philosophy? And I'd always seen life, the nature to existence, as inherently chaotic and unpredictable. And then love was a very important part of life to me as well. So I felt that I thought of creating this philosophy, which I call Love Chaos. And the basic concept of Love Chaos is that it views life as inherently unpredictable, chaotic, and which doesn't mean that there isn't order and form and cause and effect in the universe, for sure. But just in my way of looking at things, the underlying principle behind the universe is inherently, for the most part, unpredictable and chaotic. And so within this chaotic universe that I find myself in, it's important that I focus my energies, my intention on love for other people and for myself. And so from that was born the philosophy of Love Chaos. And then I started writing things down, writing notes down as they came to me. And the first book to Love Chaos came out, and I published it in that year of 2014. And from there, Love Chaos grew as I grew. As I went back to school to pursue a career as a drug and alcohol counselor, and met some amazing people, met some amazing teachers. One of whom is the artist, the painter who paints all the paintings and the covers of my books and on my website, Eric Fiazzi. He's been a fantastic mentor for me in my life, and really has shown me so much and been a great inspiration. Met others. My girlfriend at the time, who you actually met that one time, Joanne, she and I came to see you at your lecture here in Pasadena.
That's right. Yeah. She was lovely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She was amazing. Unfortunately, she and I are no longer together, but she is by far, the relationship that I had with her was one of the most beautiful that I've had in my life. She was just a great person, and we really had something wonderful, and it just didn't work out, as it oftentimes does happen that way in life. But so I met her at the school, and it just was a great experience. So in my experience of working in psychology, taking psychology classes, working in the field as a counselor, helping people who struggle with addiction and criminality. So having firsthand experience helping other people struggle with issues that I struggled with. From that experience, the ideas of Love Chaos developed. So for a lot of my what goes into the second book of Love Chaos, which is called Love Chaos in Theory and Practice, a lot of my personal experiences in not only my own life, but in my career, my job as a counselor, found its way into the development of Love Chaos. And there's a lot of psychology and the helping field in Love Chaos, as well as magical practices as well. So that is a key part of Love Chaos, is that it's not only just about practicing magic, it's also about bettering yourself as a human being through psychological tools and self-awareness. And so for me, I think it's really important that the two work together, psychology and magic. They don't need to be in opposition for me. I think they can be very beneficial if they work together. So that's the gist of Love Chaos, and of course, the book you just mentioned is the third book in the Love Chaos philosophy. And but out of the 7 books that I've written, most are either novels or short story collections. And I'm in my heart of hearts, I'm a storyteller. I love to tell stories, and I love language and literature. That's really where most of my experience has been in. But I feel, my love for literature is very is basically informed in many ways by my interest in the occult and philosophy and magical practice and my own mythology. So the two definitely work together, and they're not. I don't separate them. And so in this goes sort of to wrap it all up. It ties into what I said at the beginning, is that for me, life is an all-encompassing experience. So all aspects, from my job as a counselor to me being a father to my son, to being a writer of fiction, to being the creator and the person behind Love Chaos. All of these different elements to my life are all interwoven, and I definitely do not separate any element of my life from each other.
Thank you. The End of the World, your new book. This is interesting text, I think, because essentially what you're providing to readers is sort of your intention and then your experience in fulfilling that, and maybe kind of using that as a template for people to do something maybe similar, something different, but I don't know what you'd call that. Is like a manifesto where you're trying to rouse people to action in a sense?
Certainly. I mean, the very first sentence in the book is that it's proclaiming that this book is a call to action. I would say that it would probably be a peculiar or odd call to action, because I really try to refrain from telling people what to do. So and that really is sort of inherent to the philosophy of Love Chaos, is that I really try to be as undogmatic as possible with Love Chaos in general. And so I also wanted to stay true to that with this book as well, is that even though that very first sentence and the intent of the book is very is a call to action, getting, asking people to do their part. The way that people do their part is I really want it to be up to them. And all the details that I include in the book, in terms of my mythology, the entities that I work with, the relationships I have with them, the concepts that I have with these entity, or the concepts behind them in terms of how I define them, the nature of my agnosticism, the nature of my Gnosticism, the nature of my Luciferianism, the nature of just the way I view magical practice, all of these things, all the items that I use for the ritual, the dates that I chose, all of these different elements that went into the ritual itself. It's the elements themselves, I don't think have to be replicated by other people at all. But I think the purpose of why I included all these different things is I really wanted to, one, encourage people to act, to use their magical practice for the survival and evolution of human beings. And then also, in the process of doing that, really put a lot of effort into their ritual. So that requires a lot of thinking, a lot of emotional work, a lot of thought. Because to me, the more effort you put into your ritual, the more I'm not and I'm not like a chaos magician trying to emphasize results or anyone else. It's not about results per se. It's more about the experience itself, which usually often ends up being resulting in something that is what the practitioner wanted to do. Because I think that if you do put your 100% of yourself into your practice, you'll find that the results will be very, very rewarding in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would tend to agree with that. So maybe you could talk more about the overall intention around the book, the end of the world, this idea of sort of like a coming to a conclusion, and talk about the survival and evolution of human beings. And you conducted the magical working that the book details, like right during the beginnings of the pandemic. So, yeah, I can imagine it had a very apocalyptic sort of feel to it, but maybe you could really expand upon this for us.
Sure. Yeah. It really, the germs of the book, really the beginnings of the book started last year. And, prior to the coronavirus, it last year in particular, but really, I mean, for the last few decades, consciousness of climate change and the dangers of climate change had been very, very strong. And in me being a father, my son being last year turning 14, this year 15, being of the age where thinking in terms of what kind of future, not only that I will have as I get older, but what kind of life he will have, and hopefully be able to have children and what kind of life they will have, and where we will go as a species too. I mean, thinking just in terms of not just my son's life or his kids' lives, but just in terms of humanity. I've really felt strongly in terms of like when I created Love Chaos, for example, that the love should extend to humanity at large. And I really feel strongly that love should be expressed or experienced not just for ourselves and those that we know, but for the whole human race. And I feel that is really the key element to transcending a lot of the petty squabbles that humans have with each other. And so for me, understanding that Love Chaos is ultimately about love for humanity, I wanted to do a ritual for that love of humanity and for our future. And with in regards to the spirit of Love Chaos, it's, I created it as well, why the hell not? Why, it may be pretentious of me or presumptuous of me to go and even create it or even thinking about creating it. But I just figured, well, why not? It doesn't exist out there. So why not create it? And it spoke to me, and that's why I created it. And so too was in the same spirit of even just thinking about this ritual was there was the concern on my part of, well, how dare I even think about doing something like this, and why, and it's out of my capacity or scope, and even if let's say it is, well, why not? Why not? If I know I have that concern about our future as a species, why not? Why not do a ritual that could do something? Me being agnostic, maybe it won't do anything. There's that aspect of doubt, which I am fine with. I'm comfortable with doubt. I'm comfortable with different possibilities. But this doubt does not negate my passion for life. It doesn't negate my love for life. And if I know I can do something, then I'm going to do it. I think it's important to know that, being an agnostic person such as myself does not mean we are passive. We can be very passionate about life. We can be people of action. And I feel that as a practitioner, I've seen the results in these 10 years of all the rituals that I've done over this decade of how it's changed my life, in so many different ways. So I felt that the possibility was there to do a ritual to affect change and put this energy, these ideas out into the universe in the hopes of creating that change so that human beings will survive and human beings will evolve.
The way you feel about the potential for the end of the world, I don't know, that could be like human extinction as some sort of event.
Yes. Yes.
That could be some sort of like general decline.
Well, I think in terms of, I guess the starting point for me was a starting point of, keep in mind, I'm not a science nerd whatsoever. My brain has always found it really difficult to grasp a lot of the ideas and concepts in science in general, in all the different fields of science. And so my brain is much better when it comes to literature and history and telling stories and philosophy, and sort of my brain works much better in that way. When it came to math and science, I was horrible at school in that. So I'm not, in terms of who I am, I'm not a scientist whatsoever. That being said, I do have trust in science, and I do feel that I like the concept behind science, and science is inherently about evidence, and it's about what we have and what is studied, what are the results, what do you see before you, and then you not only do it yourself, but then that is judged by others in the field and so forth. So we don't come to conclusions until we find enough evidence to support that conclusion. And I feel like that's a really healthy thing for humanity to have. And so in terms of the science behind climate change is enormous. And I trust that, I trust that. I think we're kind of beyond the point of debate. That's how I feel about it. The science shows that our window of opportunity is very, very small in terms of what we can do to stop complete catastrophe. And so that, and I mentioned in the book, there was another book that was an inspiration for me. It was Brazen Vessel by Alcestis Demetch and Peter Gray of Scarlet Imprints, which to me, by the way, is one of the greatest books of the century. I think it is just a phenomenal book in so many different ways. The two of them are, of course, great publishers, but they're also excellent authors in their own right. And essay after essay just hits you again and again with just amazing insight and beautiful expression. And I've been definitely a big champion of Scarlet Imprint in their work. And this book was just really hit me hard. And one of the notions in the book was that, and I think I'm pretty accurate, and I don't think they're going to disagree with me if they would hear this, but is the acceptance of death and the acceptance of the end. And so for them, and again, I could be wrong, but my impression from reading the book is this acceptance that it's too late. Humanity will die off. We didn't do enough. It was too late. So this next stage for human beings is about acceptance of our end and the psychological and spiritual necessity that we will need to take in accepting that end. And that to me was something that I actually embraced. I feel like that is healthy. I do think that there is actually a good chance that we are going to die, if not this century, by the next century, the human beings will no longer exist, and primarily because of climate change. But that other part of me, the uncertainty to the universe, to me, being agnostic, was this possibility that we might not die. We might not end. We might not perish this century or the next, that we might survive and also evolve. So this same principle of the why not, I is what really inspired me to write this book. And that is really like the strong motivation for writing the book.
Well, I think I feel on like some level that's not intellectual, like I'm glad that you wrote the book and had the reaction of like, well, what if that's not a foregone conclusion? Because I mean, from my perspective, I don't really see this realm as like a primarily one that's based on physical, material, substance phenomena as the root cause and ultimate result of everything. So,
Sure.
To me, I can't even really imagine or envision, like, I can imagine and envision like a great reduction in population, but I can't imagine or envision like a complete extinction of humanity, because like on a certain level, the human's function is like intimately interrelated with the divine itself. So there's a lot of factors at play that we don't necessarily have the capacity to appreciate, that see our survival maybe as important, but not because of like us as individuals in our lives, but more as because of just our general function as what our body mind is capable of doing. But that's kind of a digression. Anyway, so I'm glad you had that reaction and wrote the book, because I feel like, especially when we're talking about magic, and mysticism, and it's about like this sort of transcendence, like it's about a self-transcendence, a transcendence of conceptuality or of culture, and certainly a transcendence maybe of like fixed possibility and ultimate conclusions. Right?
Yes.
It's like embracing the liminal. It's embracing potentiality and possibility, in the hopes of affecting some kind of change, right?
Right.
Whether that's self-improvement or divine union or a change in literal circumstances, I guess.
Right. Definitely. I mean, to me, I think it's all about transformation,
Mm-hmm.
and complete transformation. And that's a huge part of, I think, if you work as an occult practitioner, whether you're a mystic or a magical practitioner or a Gnostic, or however you choose to define yourself, I think, I know that people like to sometimes emphasize the differences. I've run into people who they'll see just they call themselves Gnostics, and they see the word magic and they cringe, and they're like, oh no, not a, you're one of those people, aren't you? and I think that I don't know. I mean, I feel very strongly that we're all in this sort of this experience together in different philosophies and different points of view, but we're all looking for a really deep and meaningful transformation. Whether you're a magical practitioner or a Gnostic or a mystic, or however you choose to define yourself, you're looking to change your reality, and that to me is really worthwhile. And is something that is very possible. Life has a lot of different elements to it that you can change. And so often it just seems like life is fixed and that it doesn't change and we can't change it because we do live in the here and now and the day to day, the second to second, the minute to minute, the hour to hour. And so a lot of
yeah. You said, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think it's important to clarify because you said sort of change our reality.
Yes.
And I'm curious if you mean exactly what you said, or do you mean change our experience of reality? Or maybe like change our perception so we can actually experience reality as it is? Or are you talking about something different than I am, maybe?
Well, I think, I think there's a lot of different ways to answer that question. I think that in terms of one element or one aspect of life is, for example, the issue that I had in my past as being an addict, being addicted to drugs and alcohol. And that was something that I knew from my working with sigils, with sex magic, with using charging sigils and with a statement of intent, a desire, in much the same way that Austin Osman Spare worked with sigils, is that you want to put something, a desire, a statement of intent deep into the subconscious. And there are different techniques to do this, as you know. And so this was something where I would put a statement of intent that I will no longer be addicted to alcohol, for example, right? And I would put that in, and through a day's worth of a ritual and all these different techniques that I utilized, I would put that into myself, into my subconscious. And so the reality that I was changing was this underlying belief deep in my subconscious that I had that I was an addict, that it was a necessary part of who I was to have alcohol every day. And it changed my reality for sure. It changed how I related to my reality, and it changed the people around me because they were responding to me in a different way because I was a different person. So the change that took place in reality started within me, and then from within me, it extended to all the different people that I ran into. And so in that sense, it was a change of my perception of myself, which resulted in a change in my reality, who I was, which then resulted in a change in reality, and not just in my perspective of reality, but reality itself, because the experiences that I was having with other people were very different. And it was all it all started with this belief in myself. Now, this new book that I did is very different in the sense that the magical practice that I did was about releasing ideas, the statement of intent, out into the external world, and in a way where having more, I would say, trust in this spirit world, in the entities that I worked with, for them to live a life of their own out into the universe. And I feel, again, even though I'm agnostic, I do feel very strongly that there is some kind of other dimension that interacts with this one. And I feel very strongly that we can have a relationship with this other dimension and with the entities that interact with us. I feel they interact with us all of the time. And so this transformation I think is a process. It's not a magic. I think it's important for me. I think it's not a matter of stage magic, which is about illusion and doing tricks and making reality appear different. In that sense, for me, this transformation of reality is again a process, and it primarily through consciousness. But I do feel that reality itself, the nature to reality, does change in this process. For me, it extends beyond just the perception of the individual on reality.
Thank you. I think that's helpful. Kind of like clarify your view on how this functions within the system. Can you talk a little bit more about the specific deities that you worked with, how you selected them? Do you have a history with them prior? And then maybe a little bit about the composition in the form of a grimoire to encapsulate what you were doing.
Sure. So the thing that I mentioned in Love, Chaos, and Theory and Practice, in the book that I released last year, was that I felt in chapter 3 about occult magical practice, I felt very strongly that it was important for people to create their own mythology. And I use that word mythology in a very conscious, well, I hope conscious way, in the sense that most people's perception of mythology is that it is a belief in something that's not true, or it's a belief in something that is more about metaphors, or it's about religions or spiritual beliefs from a long time ago. When we think of mythology, we think of Joseph Campbell, we think of Greek mythology, Norse mythology, and so on. And we tend to look at them as, well, that's interesting, or I like that, or there's some insight there, but I wouldn't believe in that, And I think for a person to call your own belief in certain entities and the stories behind those entities and their relationships, to call it a mythology, I think it helps in a number of ways. I think it can help a person to allow the ability to be okay with doubt, to be okay with the uncertainty of your own beliefs, to be okay with this attachment that we have with entities or a entity. Could be purely conceptual. They may not have an objective reality outside of your own imagination, and that was really important for me. And that's a really important element to Love Chaos, and for people practicing Love Chaos Magick. And so that was a key thing to it. And then in terms of the entities themselves, a lot of it is based on my reading, research in previous authors, contemporary authors, over the last few decades. And even prior to my actual ritual practice of 10 years ago, of my searching for different philosophies and ways of life. I've always been a searcher. For me, I've always liked to pursue the truth behind existence, and I've gone through a lot of different phases. So, there was even a time when I was a Christian, and back when I was about 19, 20, 21, and I was very gung-ho about that, and it was a great experience. But then I let that go and I moved on and went to different a really other completely opposite experience. And so I've gone through different phases in my life, and so the power of inversion to me is I think very helpful when we can invert a concept of, say, an entity and change its meaning for us from past traditions. And if you do some research and you put some real thought into it, especially so, not just on a whim, but actually put some real serious thought and study into it, and incorporate it into your life in a really meaningful way, then that to me is when the power of inversion can be really effective. And so for me, I've been in a process of inverting things for a while now, even prior to my creating Love Chaos. I am a huge fan of Dostoevsky, the Russian author Fyodor Dostoevsky. And one of his novels is Crime and Punishment. It was about a young man who commits a murder. And it follows his sort of, the murder happens fairly early on in the story. And we follow him and how he rationalizes it and how he sees himself, how he views society and so forth. And I love this story so much, but I wanted to invert the meaning behind the story of what Dostoevsky wrote. And he had a Christian philosophy behind his work, an existential Christian philosophy, but still inherently Christian. And for him, it was important for the lead character to embrace guilt. He found that it was powerful in his eventual transcendence was accepting his responsibility for what he did, which is, I think, to me, is very healthy. But the element of guilt, of turning himself in to the authorities, admitting that he was wrong, and that certainly is very important. We do need to admit that we're wrong. But I wanted to invert that. I wanted to write a story about a young man who committed a murder, but the circumstances were very different. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov, he does not commit it really for any good reason, and he murders an old lady who's harmless, and he tries to rationalize and justify it, and there's just no possible way for him to do so, no matter how intellectual or philosophical he is. So for me, I wanted to create a story where the lead character actually commits a murder in self-defense, and the circumstances basically required him to do so. Either he would be killed himself or he had to kill. And so in my story, the character's transcendence or emotional growth or coming of age is actually a denial of guilt. It's a denial of the philosophy of guilt, and an embrace of the individual, a love of the individual. And by loving ourself, the individual extends then to the love of humanity. So that was again, going to this power of inversion, which is very, very important to me. So this was even before I created Love Chaos. So this has stuck with me throughout. The first book of Love Chaos uses the three colors of alchemy: black, white, and red, and a lot of other beliefs and practices. I know there's more colors than that, but in most cases, or a lot of cases, you'll see those are the three main colors of alchemy: black, which is death and decay, and white is purification, and red is perfection. And for me, I invert the meanings behind those colors. Black is birth, creation; white is corruption; and red is evolution, not perfection. And these are themes that are running through the stories that I'm writing. The first book, which was called Black, and the second, White, which I'm writing right now, and the third will be Red. And these are part of a trilogy I'm writing called The Story of Us All. So again, I'm in a process of inverting. So I'm getting around to this because it's important that when I came to the conclusion that the entities that I wanted to work with, this is the history that came behind why I chose to work with these entities. And so I have always found a kind of a fondness to Lucifer, and not only in terms of what he represents as a anti-hero, but in terms of the love of self, of pride, of power, that can be balanced by compassion. Passion can be balanced by compassion. Pride can be balanced by humility. And so I feel, and then power balanced by, sensitivity. And these are characteristics that I felt could be embraced in a figure such as Lucifer. And so for me, I also wanted to invert the role that Lucifer is a anti-hero in the sense, or the evil prince of darkness or fallen angel. So I also had a fondness to Aleister Crowley, and there's many things in Thelema which I find appealing as well. And in Thelemic philosophy, Babylon is a very important figure. the holy whore, and her consort is chaos. And in ancient Greek, the Greeks viewed an early stage of the universe was chaos, and so I that appealed to me. So in my sort of hierarchy of my philosophy or my mythology, everything started with the void, with nothing, no thing, and out of that state of nothing, nothing wanted to know itself, and so created everything. And in my mythology, it requires to have a male and a female principle to create life. And so there was chaos, the father, and Babylon, the mother. And chaos was the first sort of direct link to the void, to no thing, and is inherent in everything, in experiences, in life. But in order for life to even exist, there had to be a female principle. And that, to me, is embodied by Babylon. And she is a sex goddess. She is a goddess that represents lust and the power of lust. And this is not just only purely sensual, but it has a philosophical and a psychological component to it. And that is that she is, as the Thelemites would say, she's the holy whore and the mother figure, and will invites everyone. She denies no one. The only price that she asks you to pay is the elimination or the destruction of your ego. And for me, in a psychological sense, this is very important. I feel that each of us are extremely important, and we're extremely sacred and beautiful and special, but in a way also not special. There is an infinite number of other beings out there in the universe. There's certainly billions of other human beings just on this one planet. We don't know what else is out there in the universe. So there's so much in the universe that exists. I think that in terms of the relationship one would have if one is devoted to Babylon, is understanding and accepting that Babylon may love us as our mother, but she certainly loves other entities out there. And to accept that and to embrace that is a healthy psychological step that we need to take. And the entity that represents the denial of that. So in my philosophy, the rebel is not Lucifer, but is, again, another thelemic figure, is Choronzon. And he's the Lord of the Abyss. And he is a figure that denies his mother, denies his father, and proclaims himself as the one and true creator being. And also, it goes further beyond that, though, is that it is an entity that seeks out to destroy every other form of existence, or at least subjugate it, oppress it, and dominate it in a very power-hungry sense. So in this sense, the power of Choronzon is not about self-empowerment, but it's about he seeks power by crushing others. And for me, I feel that just as the power and the light of Lucifer is in everyone, I also feel that the insecurities, the jealousy, the hatred, that aspect of Choronzon and what he represents is inside us all as well. And so beyond these are the sort of the main figures in my mythology. There's other ones as well underneath them, but those are the main figures in my mythology. And working with that and working with the figures underneath them, creating a relationship with them, is how I came about to create the ritual that I did. And I felt it really helps a lot when we have a thought out and original mythology that is our own. I think it can really help to invigorate your existence and the rituals that we do.
Thank you. And just to clarify, because I think it'd be helpful, you mentioned, creating your own mythology, and you refer to these beings as entities. And I'm just wondering if you can sort of maybe refine your definition of what these beings are. Are they self-existent? How would you relate it to, say, like the Greek gods and goddesses or something along those lines?
Well, I think it's very important for me. And I think if someone were to follow the path of love chaos and do rituals, do magical practice, there's a lot of room for one's own beliefs and one's own practices. You know, a person could be a Christian, or it can be a Muslim or a Hindu or a Buddhist or an atheist or a pagan or whatever, and still follow the path of love chaos. So and I really want to make it clear that my being what I call myself an agnostic Luciferian is not something that other people have to do to follow love chaos, and certainly not to do this ritual for the survival and evolution of human beings. So the one thing that I do ask people to do, if you do want to follow love chaos, is do what I do. And that does mean that you do have to have an element of agnosticism. You have to have an element of doubt, which means in my version of doubt and agnosticism is that you have to be okay with the possibility, two different possibilities. One is that the entities that you work with, the spiritual reality that you work with, could be possibly just in your imagination. They could be completely fictitious. They could just be ideas, concepts, and have no outside objective reality whatsoever, that it could all just be in your head. And so in order to follow love chaos, you'd have to be okay with that possibility. But you'd also have to be okay with the other possibility, which is that there may be a real, true, objective existence of these entities and of the spiritual realm, that it may actually really, truly exist outside of your own head. And so a love chaos practitioner has to be okay with either possibilities. And that's the way it is for me. All of these entities that I mentioned, all the other ones that I work with, from No Thing to Chaos to Babylon to Sharonzon to Lucifer to many more, they're all for me could be just completely my own creation and my own imagination, or they could really truly hold their own existence outside of me. And then for me, I'm okay with either possibility.
Okay. And thank you, Derek, for taking the time to talk with us again and sharing your practice and your work with us. Could you please remind people where they can find you online?
Sure. Yes, definitely. It is the best place to go is my website, which is love-chaos.com. And that's spelled LOVE-CHAOS.com. My website has all of my books, all the Love Chaos books, all the works of fiction. I've written several novels, short story collections, and also did music. I have a number of music albums on Bandcamp, most of them related to my books. I have links to all the interviews I've done over the years, and one of which was one I did with you, as you know, many years ago, or 3 years ago. And there's a number of things. Also, my father, his work is on there on my website. And then there's links to other places where I'm at on social media. I'm most active on Facebook, in the Love Chaos Facebook group. So there's over 1,000 people on there, which is very nice to see and accumulated over the years. And people see, I for whatever reason, people have seemed to respond to that the most out of. I'm not very active on Twitter at all. I'm on Instagram a little bit, but most of the things that I post regarding Love Chaos or things that I'm into are in that Love Chaos Facebook group. So if you'd like to join, of course, you're more than welcome. And to find it, you just go to those Facebook groups and type in Love Chaos. and you
Derek,
will
it's
find
such a
it
pleasure
there.
to speak with you. I really appreciate the way you are so open, and you're very kind-hearted, and it's just, it's nice to talk with you about this, and I wish you all the best, and I look forward to talking to you again soon, because I always enjoy it, and it feels like it hasn't been enough over the years, but hopefully we can talk again soon.
Definitely, Greg. I really am extremely grateful to you. You're a wonderful human being. It's been a pleasure to have gotten to know you. I know we don't see each other in person. We only saw each other that one time, which was a beautiful experience, by the way. Yeah, it was really great to see you, and you did an amazing job. And I was my girlfriend at the time really loved it too. So that was something I'll never forget. And yeah, I just I really appreciate you and the work that you do. Both with the Occult of Personality and just as a person. So
Thank you, Derek.
very appreciative.
Right, let me just
and thank you very much.
In the second half of this interview in the Chamber of Reflection, Derek Hunter goes into depth about the specifics of his magical working and the deities involved. It's great to get this level of insight into a private magical working designed to have such vast effects. Thanks to Derek for sharing his work with us. Listen to that exclusive recording at chamberofreflection.com or at our Patreon at patreon.com/occult of personality. I'd like to remind you that although you're able to listen to this podcast at no charge, it costs time and money to create. We ask you to support our efforts and the creation of future podcasts by joining the membership section at chamberofreflection.com or subscribing via Patreon at patreon.com/occult of personality. And if you're already supporting the show or have done so in the past, my heartfelt thanks, and I salute you. Thanks for listening, and until next time.